Your mind is being hijacked by distractions every single second, and this is no accident. Over 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius faced the exact same chaos in ancient Rome, ruling an entire empire while maintaining an absolutely focused and unshakable mind. He developed 10 practical methods that the Stoics used to shield their minds against everything that tried to steal their attention and vital energy. These same principles that allowed ancient philosophers to maintain absolute clarity in the midst of total chaos can completely transform you to concentrate and be productive today, eliminating once and for all the distractions that are sabotaging your goals and stealing your days. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment which part of the world you're watching from. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. You are here tonight not by accident. You are here because somewhere deep within you, beneath the noise and the endless scroll, beneath the notifications and the 1,000 voices demanding your attention, there lives a part of you that is tired. Tired of being pulled in every direction, tired of starting tasks you never finish, tired of the constant buzzing in your mind that keeps you from ever truly resting in the present moment. You are here because you sense that something fundamental has shifted in the way you live, and you want to find your way back to clarity, back to purpose, back to yourself. The ancient Stoics understood distraction in ways we are only beginning to grasp again today. They lived in a different world, without smartphones or social media, without the digital flood that drowns us daily. Yet they faced their own forms of distraction, their own battles for attention and focus. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire while war raged at the borders. Epictetus taught philosophy while remembering his years in slavery. Seneca navigated the treacherous politics of Rome while seeking wisdom and peace. These men knew what it meant to be pulled away from what truly mattered. They knew the cost of a distracted mind, and they developed methods, practices, disciplines that allowed them to remain centered in a chaotic world. Tonight, you will learn 10 Stoic methods to eliminate distraction from your life. Not to suppress it, not to fight against it with sheer willpower that eventually fails, but to understand its nature and to cultivate a mind that naturally turns away from the trivial and toward the essential. These are not quick fixes or life hacks. They are ancient practices refined over centuries, tested by philosophers and emperors, slaves and teachers, people who lived through wars and plagues and political upheaval, and yet found within themselves an unshakable core of attention and purpose. Before we begin with the first method, understand this fundamental truth that runs through all Stoic teaching. Distraction is not primarily an external problem. Yes, we live in an age designed to fragment your attention, engineered by the brightest minds to keep you scrolling, clicking, consuming. But the root of distraction lies within, in how you relate to your own mind, in the habits of thought you have cultivated over years, often without realizing it. The Stoics teach that you always have a choice, not about what happens around you, but about where you place your attention, what you value, what you pursue. Let us begin with the first method, the foundation upon which all other Stoic practices rest. This is the principle that Epictetus taught before anything else, the distinction that Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again in his private journals. This is the dichotomy of control, and it is the master key to eliminating distraction from your life. The first method is this: focus only on what you can control. Let everything else go. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but living by this principle transforms everything. Most of the distractions that fragment your day, that steal your peace, that keep you awake at night exist because you are trying to control things that are not yours to control. You worry about what others think of you, but their thoughts belong to them, not you. You stress about outcomes that depend on 1,000 variables beyond your influence. You replay conversations from the past, wishing you had said something different, as if your worry could somehow reach back through time and change what has already occurred. Epictetus taught his students to divide all things into 2 categories. In the first category are things that are truly up to you, within your power, subject to your will. In the second category is everything else. The first category is remarkably small. It contains only your own thoughts, judgments, desires, and actions. your opinions, your values, your choices in each moment. The second category contains literally everything else in the universe: the weather, the past, the future, your body's eventual decay, other people's actions, the economy, politics, whether you get sick or stay healthy, whether you succeed or fail in the world's eyes. All of it, every single thing outside your own inner citadel of reason and will, belongs to the second category. Most people spend most of their energy on the second category. They worry about things they cannot control. They try to force outcomes. They stress about possibilities. They ruminate on what already happened. And this is precisely where distraction breeds. When you focus on what you cannot control, your attention fragments into 1,000 directions because you are trying to hold on to smoke, trying to grasp water in your fist. The distraction is not just external. It is the natural consequence of directing your attention toward things that will never respond to your will. Imagine for a moment what your life would look like if you truly internalize this distinction. You are working on a project that matters to you. In the middle of your work, you remember that someone might judge it harshly. That worry is a distraction, pulling you away from the work itself. But the work, the quality of attention you bring to it, the effort you pour into it, this is within your control. What others think about it is not. The moment you recognize this, you can let the worry go. Not because you do not care about the outcome, but because you understand that caring about things outside your control only diminishes your power to act on what is within your control. You are in a conversation, trying to connect with someone. Your mind drifts to wondering whether they like you, whether you are saying the right things, whether this will lead to friendship or opportunity. All distractions. What is actually within your control? Being present. Listening genuinely, speaking honestly. The rest, their response, their feelings about you, what happens next, all of that belongs to the gods, to fate, to the vast web of causation that includes their own choices and history and mood and countless other factors. When you release your grip on controlling their response, you can finally be fully present in the conversation itself. The Stoics were not passive people. They did not teach resignation or apathy. Marcus Aurelius led armies. Seneca advised emperors. Epictetus founded a school. They acted vigorously in the world, but they acted only on what was within their power to change, and they accepted everything else with equanimity. This is the paradox that liberates you from distraction. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you discover immense power over what you actually can control, your attention itself. Think of your attention as a resource, like water in a desert. You have only so much of it, and every day you must choose where it flows. When you pour your attention into worrying about things outside your control, into imagining outcomes you cannot determine, into rehearsing conversations that are over or might never happen, you are pouring that precious water onto sand where nothing can grow. But when you direct your attention only toward what is yours to direct, toward your own thoughts and choices and actions, you are watering a garden where real things can flourish. This first method requires practice. It requires that you catch yourself dozens of times a day at first, in the act of trying to control what cannot be controlled. You check your email and feel anxiety about whether someone has responded. Stop. Is their response within your control? No. What is within your control? Whether you composed your email clearly and honestly. That is done. Let the rest go. You see a news headline that fills you with outrage about events on the other side of the world. Stop. Are those events within your control? No. Is getting angry and distracted for the next hour going to change them? No. What is within your control? Whether you stay informed enough to act locally, to vote, to volunteer, to influence what you actually can influence. Everything else is distraction. The Stoics used a powerful image to teach this principle. They said that your mind is like a fortress, a citadel. Outside the walls, battles rage, storms blow, people scheme and shout, events unfold. But inside the citadel is a courtyard that remains still. That courtyard is your faculty of choice, your ability to decide what you will value, what you will pursue, how you will interpret what happens. No external force can breach those walls unless you open the gate. And distraction is nothing but opening the gate to things that have no business in your inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, reminding himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. He wrote this not once, but repeatedly, in different ways, as if he needed to convince himself daily. Because this is not a lesson you learn once and remember forever. It is a practice you return to again and again. The world constantly invites you to care about things outside your control. Your own habits of mind constantly pull you toward distraction. The practice is to notice when this happens and gently, without judgment, return your attention to what is actually yours. When you feel distracted today or tomorrow or next week, ask yourself this question: am I trying to control something that is not mine to control? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be yes. And in that recognition, you can choose differently. You can release your grip on the outcome, the opinion, the past event, the future possibility, and return to this moment, to this choice, to this action that is actually within your power. Let me give you another example that might feel familiar. You decide you want to focus on deep work, on creating something meaningful, on studying, on writing, on building. You clear time in your calendar. You sit down, ready to begin. And then the distractions come. An email notification, a text message, a thought about something you need to do later, a worry about whether this work will even matter. Each of these is a pull towards something outside the present moment, outside the action you chose to take. The email is someone else's priority trying to become yours. The text is someone else's timing interrupting yours. The thought about later is the future trying to steal the present. The worry about whether it matters is asking for certainty about outcomes you cannot control. The Stoic practitioner recognizes all of this and makes a simple choice. Right now, in this moment, I am going to do this work. I cannot control whether the work succeeds in the world. I cannot control whether others value it. I cannot control what might happen later today. All I can control is the quality of attention I bring to this present task. And so I will bring my full attention here, now, to this. That is not suppressing distraction through force of will. That is understanding where your power actually lies and choosing to exercise it where it matters. Over time, as you practice this first method, something shifts. You begin to notice how much energy you are wasting on things you never could control. You begin to feel that energy returning to you, available for what matters. Your attention, which once scattered in 1,000 directions like light through a prism, begins to focus like a lens that can start fires. You become formidable not because you are controlling more things, but because you have stopped trying to control the wrong things. You become focused not because you have eliminated all distractions from your environment, but because you have eliminated them from your mind by understanding their true nature. The ancient Stoics lived this principle in ways that put our challenges to shame. Epictetus was a slave, literally owned by another person, his body not his own, his time not his own, his very life subject to another's whim. Yet he found freedom by understanding that no one could control his inner life without his permission. No one could force him to have certain opinions or to value the wrong things. His attention remained his own. Marcus Aurelius had the opposite problem. Overwhelmed with the responsibilities of empire, everyone wanting his attention, his decisions affecting millions. Yet he too found peace by returning always to the same principle. Control what you can control, accept what you cannot. If they could find focus and eliminate distraction in their circumstances, you can find it in yours. The first step is always the same. Stop trying to control what you cannot control. Stop letting your attention fragment across 1,000 things that are not yours to direct. Return to the citadel. Return to your choices, your values, your actions in this present moment. That is where your power lies. That is where distraction ends and true life begins. As you prepare for rest tonight, practice this method even now. You cannot control whether you fall asleep quickly. You cannot control what dreams come. You cannot control tomorrow's events. But you can control whether you let your mind rehearse tomorrow's worries right now. You can control whether you bring gentle attention to your breath, to the sensation of lying down, to this moment of rest that is actually happening. Let go of everything else. Let it drift away like clouds passing. What is yours will remain. What is not yours never was. And in that understanding, you will find a profound and practical peace. This is the first method, the foundation of all that follows. Focus only on what you can control. Everything else is distraction. Everything else is smoke and noise. Return to your center. Return to your power. Return again and again every time you notice your attention drifting toward what you cannot change. This simple practice, applied consistently, will transform your life more than any productivity system, any app, any external reorganization. Because it changes not your circumstances, but your relationship to them. And that relationship is the only thing that was ever truly yours to change. The second Stoic method for eliminating distraction might seem counterintuitive at first. It asks you to deliberately think about things going wrong, to imagine difficulties before they arrive, to mentally rehearse challenges and losses. The Stoics called this practice premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, and it is one of the most powerful techniques they developed for maintaining focus and presence in a chaotic world. When you understand why this practice works, you will see how much of your distraction comes not from what is actually happening, but from your resistance to what might happen. Think about how your mind behaves right now, today, without this practice. You start your day with plans and intentions. Maybe you decide this morning that you will focus on important work, that you will finally tackle that project, that you will not get distracted. And then, within an hour or two, something unexpected happens. A friend cancels plans and you feel disappointed, and that disappointment pulls you into checking social media. An email arrives with criticism, and suddenly you cannot focus on anything else, replaying the message, composing responses in your head. Your computer crashes, or you spill coffee, or someone says something that bothers you, and your careful intentions scatter like leaves in wind. Why does this happen? The Stoics understood something profound about the human mind. Most of your distraction is not a response to what is actually occurring, but to the gap between what you expected and what happened. Your mind recoils from surprises, especially unpleasant ones. That recoil, that moment of resistance and shock, creates an opening for distraction to flood in. You were mentally unprepared, and so the unexpected event hijacks your attention because your mind must suddenly adjust all its assumptions and expectations. Premeditatio malorum closes that gap, not by making you pessimistic or anxious, but by making you genuinely prepared for reality as it actually is, rather than reality as you wish it would be. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. Before rising from bed, he would remind himself, "Today I will meet people who are rude, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, and antisocial. They are like this because they do not know good from bad, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I know that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not because we share blood or ancestry, but because we share reason and a spark of the divine, so none of them can hurt me, for no one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel anger at my relative or hate them, for we came into the world to work together." Look closely at what Marcus is doing here. He is not expecting a perfect day. He is not setting himself up for disappointment by imagining that everyone will be kind, that everything will go smoothly, that no obstacles will arise. Instead, he is mentally rehearsing the likely difficulties. People will be difficult today. Things will not go as planned. Obstacles will appear. By expecting this, by seeing it clearly before it happens, he removes the element of surprise that normally triggers distraction. When someone is rude to him later that day, it does not derail him. He already anticipated it. He already decided how he would respond, with understanding rather than anger, with focus on what he can control rather than reaction to what he cannot. The rudeness, which might have consumed his thoughts for hours if it came as a surprise, passes through his awareness like water through a net. He remains focused on his true work because he was prepared for this kind of interruption. You can practice this method starting today. Before you begin your work, before you enter a difficult situation, before you face a day that demands your focus, take 5 minutes for premeditation. Imagine what could go wrong, not in an anxious, spiraling way, but clearly and calmly. What obstacles might appear? What interruptions are likely? What disappointments might come? And then, crucially, decide in advance how you will respond. Decide that when the interruption comes, you will not let it steal your attention. Decide that when the disappointment arrives, you will feel it and then return to what matters. Seneca wrote about this practice extensively. He advised his friend Lucilius to set aside time regularly to imagine loss. Imagine that you lose your wealth. How would you respond? Imagine that a friendship ends. How would you maintain your equanimity? Imagine that your reputation suffers. How would you focus on virtue rather than image? Seneca is not asking you to dwell on these things morbidly. He is asking you to remove their power to distract you by facing them mentally before they arrive. Here is what happens when you do not practice premeditation. Your peace depends on everything going exactly as you hope. You are like someone walking on a tightrope with no safety net. requiring perfect conditions to stay balanced. The slightest wind, the smallest wobble, and you fall into distraction, anxiety, reaction. But when you regularly imagine difficulties, you install a safety net woven from acceptance and preparation. Things can go wrong, you know they likely will, and you have already decided you will not let that derail what matters. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you plan to spend tomorrow morning in deep focus, working on a project that requires your full attention. Tonight, practice premeditation. Close your eyes and imagine the obstacles that might arise. You might imagine waking up tired, feeling resistance to beginning. You might imagine notifications interrupting you, or someone asking for your time. You might imagine the work feeling harder than expected, frustration arising, the temptation to quit and check your phone. Imagine all of this clearly. And then imagine yourself responding with stoic focus. You feel tired, but you begin anyway. The notification arrives, but you let it wait. The work feels hard, but you stay with it. Someone asks for your time, but you kindly say no or offer a later moment. By imagining this, you are not manifesting negativity. You are training your mind to respond rather than react. When tomorrow comes and those exact obstacles appear, as some of them inevitably will, you will not be surprised. You will not feel that spike of resistance that normally opens the door to distraction. You will simply recognize what you already anticipated and follow the response you already chose. The Stoics took this practice to profound depths. They meditated regularly on death itself, the ultimate evil that premeditation addresses. Memento mori, remember death, was their constant reminder, not to be morbid, but to eliminate the ultimate distraction, living as if you have infinite time, as if what matters can wait, as if your attention is a resource you can squander today and replenish tomorrow. When you remember clearly that death is coming, that your time is finite, that this day is irreplaceable, distraction loses much of its power. You do not have time to waste on trivialities. You do not have attention to spare on things that do not matter. Imagine practicing this right now. Imagine clearly that you have exactly 1 year left to live, not in a fearful way, but as a simple fact. 1 year, then nothing. How would you spend tomorrow? What would deserve your attention? What distractions would suddenly reveal themselves as absurd wastes of your precious remaining time? The Stoics taught that this is always true, whether you have 1 year or 50. You do not know how much time you have. Every day could be your last. And so every day demands the same question. Is this how I want to use my irreplaceable attention? When Marcus Aurelius rode out to war, he knew he might not return. When Seneca served under Nero, he knew the emperor could order his death at any moment. They lived with mortality as an immediate reality, not an abstract future concern. And far from making them anxious or distracted, this awareness focused them absolutely. If today might be your last day, you do not waste it scrolling mindlessly. You do not spend it in petty arguments or consuming entertainment that does not nourish you. You do not postpone what matters. You focus on what is essential, and distraction fades because you see clearly that you cannot afford it. You can practice a lighter version of memento mori daily. Each morning when you wake, before you reach for your phone, before you dive into the day's demands, take 1 moment to remember, this day will not come again. Whatever hours you have today, this is it. You will never get them back. They will be spent on something. The question is whether they will be spent on what you actually value, or on whatever manages to grab your attention through force or habit. That simple remembering, practiced sincerely, eliminates so much distraction. Because distraction thrives on the illusion that you have unlimited time, that you can always focus later, that this moment does not really matter. Premeditation also helps you see through one of distraction's most seductive forms, the constant checking, the refreshing, the looking for updates. Why do you check your email so often? Partly habit, yes, but underneath is usually a hope or a fear. You hope something good has arrived, or you fear something bad has arrived, and you want to know immediately. But if you have practiced premeditation, you have already imagined both. You have imagined getting good news and receiving it with gratitude, but not elation that destabilizes you. You have imagined getting bad news and responding with equanimity and wisdom. So the compulsion to check constantly diminishes. The news will arrive when it arrives. You will handle it appropriately. There is no need to fragment your attention by checking every few minutes. The same applies to social media, to news, to any form of input that you compulsively check. Ask yourself what you are really seeking. Usually you are seeking either validation or information, and usually you are seeking it to calm some anxiety about missing out or being left behind or not being enough. Premeditation addresses the root. You imagine not getting the validation, you imagine missing out, you imagine being left behind, and you decide in advance that your worth and your focus do not depend on any of that. You are free to check once a day, or once a week, or never, because you have already faced the worst possible outcome in your mind and found that you can handle it. Epictetus taught his students to practice premeditation, even with small daily frustrations. Before you leave your house, imagine that you might encounter traffic. Decide now that you will not let it ruin your peace. Imagine that someone might keep you waiting. Decide now that you will use that time for reflection rather than frustration. Imagine that your plans might change unexpectedly. Decide now that you will adapt with grace. This practice seems simple, almost trivial, but it eliminates the tiny distractions that accumulate into a scattered, reactive life. Think of how much attention you lose each day to surprise and resistance. Someone is late, and you spend 20 minutes in annoyance, checking your watch, composing angry speeches in your head. That is 20 minutes of attention stolen by lack of preparation. But if you anticipated the possibility of lateness, if you brought a book or simply decided you would use the time for calm reflection, those 20 minutes remain yours. The distraction never gets its foothold because you removed the gap between expectation and reality. The deepest form of this practice involves imagining the loss of what you love most. The Stoics did this not to torture themselves, but to cherish what they have while they have it, and to prepare themselves to continue living with virtue and focus if loss comes. Seneca advised imagining periodically that your loved ones might die, not to be morbid, but to love them more fully today, to not postpone important conversations, to not take their presence for granted, to not be distracted from appreciating them by the illusion that they will always be here. When you practice this, something profound happens. You realize that clinging, that anxious grasping at people and things to stay exactly as they are, is itself a major source of distraction. You cannot focus on what you are doing because part of your mind is always trying to control whether you will keep what you have, whether things will change, whether loss will come. But when you have already imagined loss and decided you can bear it, you can love and enjoy what you have without that desperate clinging. Your attention is freed to be fully present because you are not constantly anxiously checking to make sure everything is still where you left it. This is not fatalism. The Stoics were not teaching that you should not try to preserve good things or that you should not work against bad outcomes. Marcus Aurelius fought to protect Rome. Seneca tried to influence Nero toward better governance. They acted vigorously to create good outcomes. But they did not depend emotionally on those outcomes. They prepared mentally for any result. And that preparation freed them to act with focus and clarity, undistracted by anxiety about whether their efforts would succeed. You can begin this practice tonight. Before you sleep, spend 5 minutes in premeditation. Imagine tomorrow not going perfectly. Imagine the obstacles that might arise, the interruptions, the disappointments. Imagine yourself meeting them with calm attention, with acceptance of what you cannot control, with focus on what you can. Do not imagine pessimistically, as if expecting the worst will protect you from it. Imagine realistically, knowing that life includes difficulty, and then imagine yourself responding with wisdom. Over time, this practice rewires your relationship to distraction at its source. You stop being surprised by the normal frustrations of life. You stop recoiling from obstacles, and thereby creating the opening for distraction. You meet each moment more as it is, and less as you wish it were. And in that acceptance, your attention becomes steadier, less prone to being pulled away by every unexpected breeze. This is the second method. Premeditate difficulty, imagine loss, remember death, and in that clear-eyed preparation, find the focus that comes from being genuinely ready for reality. The third Stoic method for eliminating distraction addresses one of the deepest sources of fractured attention, the failure to distinguish between what truly matters and what merely seems urgent or appealing in the moment. The Stoics called this the practice of maintaining a hierarchy of values, of knowing with crystal clarity what you are living for, so that when competing demands arise, when distractions call, you have an internal compass that points always toward true north. Without this clarity, your attention scatters across whatever shouts loudest, whatever feels most pressing in the moment, regardless of whether it aligns with what you actually care about. Think about yesterday or last week. What did you spend your attention on? If someone analyzed your actions, your choices, where your focus went hour by hour, what would they conclude you value most? For many people, the honest answer is uncomfortable. The external observer might conclude that you value other people's opinions above your own peace because you spent hours on social media comparing yourself to others. They might conclude that you value shallow entertainment above deep satisfaction because you spent your evening consuming content that you will not remember tomorrow rather than doing something that nourishes you. They might conclude that you value reaction above intention because you let your day be shaped by whatever arrived in your inbox rather than by what you decided matters. The gap between what you think you value and what your attention reveals you actually value is where distraction lives and breeds. The Stoics understood that you must bridge this gap through rigorous honesty and consistent practice. You must identify clearly what you value most, what kind of person you want to be, what you are living for, and then you must train your attention to serve those values rather than betray them 100 times a day. Marcus Aurelius returned repeatedly in his meditations to questions of value. He would ask himself, what is the nature of this thing I am pursuing? What does it really offer? Is it something within my control or outside it? Is it truly good or merely indifferent? These were not abstract philosophical questions for him. They were practical tools for eliminating distraction. When something called for his attention, he would examine whether it aligned with his values or merely felt urgent, whether it truly mattered or only appeared to matter. Let me offer you a practice that can begin to build this clarity. Take time today, even just 15 minutes, to write down your actual values. Not what you think you should value, not what others expect you to value, but what you genuinely care about at the deepest level. Maybe you value growth, learning, becoming wiser. Maybe you value connection, loving and being loved, serving others. Maybe you value creation, making something that did not exist before, contributing beauty or usefulness to the world. Maybe you value presence, experiencing life fully rather than drifting through it distracted. Write these values down clearly. Then look at how you spent yesterday. How much of your time and attention went toward these values? How much went elsewhere? The gap between these two is your distraction. Every hour spent on things that do not serve your true values is an hour stolen by distraction, even if you were busy, even if you were productive in some sense. Because productivity in service of the wrong things is just elaborate distraction. The Stoics taught that virtue is the only true good. Everything else, wealth, health, pleasure, success, reputation, all of it is indifferent. This sounds harsh at first, even wrong, but understand what they meant. These external things can be preferred. You can reasonably want them and work toward them, but they are not the source of true happiness, and they are not worth betraying your values to obtain. Your character, your integrity, your wisdom, your self-control, these are goods that cannot be taken from you and that fulfill you in a way that external achievements never can. When you truly internalize this hierarchy, distraction loses most of its power. So much of what distracts you only does so because you have misidentified it as truly important. You think you need to check what others are saying about you online because you have temporarily forgotten that their opinions are indifferent and your character is what matters. You think you need to consume the latest news or controversy because you have temporarily forgotten that most of what happens in the world is beyond your control and does not require your attention. You think you need to accumulate more, achieve more, prove more because you have temporarily forgotten that virtue is the only thing that truly satisfies and that you can practice virtue right now, right here, regardless of your external circumstances. Epictetus taught this truth to his students through constant questioning. When they wanted something, he would ask, "Why do you want that? What do you think it will give you?" When they feared something, he would ask, "Why does that threaten you? What do you think you will lose?" Often the answers revealed confused values, a belief that happiness depended on external things that were actually indifferent. And in revealing that confusion, Epictetus helped his students see where their attention was being misdirected, where distraction was draining their lives. Consider a practical example. You are working on something important when your phone buzzes with a notification. Maybe it is a like on something you posted. Maybe it is a message from someone. Maybe it is a news alert. In that moment, you face a choice that reveals your actual hierarchy of values. If you stop your important work to check the notification immediately, you are revealing that you value that external validation or information more than you value your own chosen work. You are letting your attention be commanded by whatever force is strongest, not by what you decided matters. But if you have clarified your values, if you have practiced maintaining your hierarchy, you see the choice differently. You recognize that the notification is trying to distract you from something you decided was important. You recognize that it is, in Stoic terms, an indifferent thing, neither good nor bad in itself, while your focused work is an opportunity to practice virtue, to grow, to contribute. The choice becomes obvious. The notification can wait. Your attention remains where you chose to place it. This seems like a small thing, but your life is built from thousands of such moments. Each time you let distraction pull your attention away from what you value, you are building a life that does not reflect your values. A life where you are constantly reactive, constantly at the mercy of whatever demands attention most insistently. But each time you recognize the choice and direct your attention consciously toward what matters, you are building a different kind of life, a life of integrity where your actions align with your values, where you are the master of your attention rather than its slave. The Stoics would practice this by imagining various scenarios and deciding in advance where their attention should go. Imagine you are facing a deadline on important work when a friend invites you to something fun. What do you value more in this moment? The pleasure of socializing or the satisfaction of completing your commitment? Neither answer is automatically right, but the Stoic would have clarity about their answer because they had thought about their values. They would not be torn and distracted by the choice because they already knew what they cared about more. Imagine you are criticized publicly for something. You could spend your day consumed with defending yourself, with anger at the unfairness, with worry about your reputation. Or you could recognize that your reputation is an indifference, something you cannot fully control, and that your actual character, which you can control, is what matters. The Stoic with clear values would feel the sting of criticism but would not be distracted from their true work by it. They would examine whether the criticism reveals a genuine flaw to correct, and if so, correct it. If not, they would let it pass like wind and continue focusing on what they can control, their own thoughts and actions. Marcus Aurelius offers a powerful exercise for maintaining this clarity. He would regularly remind himself, "Soon you will be dead and forgotten. Everything you pursue, everything you worry about, will be gone. All the people who know your name will be dead. The very ground you walk on will one day be walked by people who never heard of you. In that light, what actually matters? What deserves your attention in the brief time you have? This is not depressing, it is liberating. It cuts through the fog of distraction by revealing what truly matters, and what only seems to matter because you are caught up in the moment. When you remember clearly that your time is finite, that you will die, that most of what consumes your attention now will seem trivial, when you look back from your deathbed, your hierarchy of values becomes blindingly clear. You stop being distracted by petty concerns, by seeking approval, by accumulating things you do not need. You focus on what truly fulfills, growing in wisdom, loving well, contributing something meaningful, experiencing life with presence and gratitude. Let me invite you to practice this now. Imagine you are at the end of your life looking back. What will you wish you had paid more attention to? What will seem like it mattered? Almost certainly not how many followers you had, or how much money you made, or whether you won some argument or looked foolish at some party. Almost certainly you will wish you had been more present with people you love. You will wish you had done work that meant something to you rather than work that merely paid well. You will wish you had worried less and experienced more. You will wish you had been less distracted and more alive. That future self, looking back, has wisdom that can guide you now. Ask that self, what should I focus on today? What deserves my attention? What should I stop letting distract me? And then listen. The answers are probably already clear. You already know what matters. The work is to align your actual attention hour by hour with that knowledge. The Stoics taught that this alignment is virtue itself. Wisdom is seeing clearly what matters. Justice is giving each thing its proper attention, not more and not less. Courage is maintaining your focus on what matters even when it is difficult, even when distraction would be easier. Temperance is moderating your desires for things that do not truly serve your values. All four cardinal virtues, when practiced, eliminate distraction by ensuring your attention flows toward what you genuinely value. Here is another practice you can begin today. At the start of your day, before you open your phone or computer, before you let the world's demands begin shaping your attention, take 5 minutes to remember your values. Maybe write them in a journal, maybe speak them aloud. Remind yourself what kind of person you want to be, what you are living for. Then make 1 or 2 concrete decisions about how you will embody those values today. Maybe you decide, today I will prioritize deep work over shallow communication because I value creation and growth. Or, today I will be fully present when someone speaks to me because I value connection and love. Or, today I will not check social media because I value my peace and integrity more than others' fleeting opinions. These concrete decisions made when you are calm and clear become anchors when distraction calls later. When the urge arises to check social media, you remember, I decided this does not serve my values, I chose differently. And that makes it easier to keep your attention where you want it. You are not fighting temptation in the moment with willpower alone. You are remembering a decision you already made, a decision that reflects who you truly want to be. Over time, this practice builds a life of integrity, which simply means a life where your inner values and outer actions are integrated, aligned, whole. Distraction is disintegration, a life where you are fractured, where what you do does not match what you care about, where your attention scatters toward whatever pulls it. Integrity is focus, a life where your attention naturally flows toward what matters because you have trained it to serve your actual values. The ancient Stoics lived in times as distracting as ours, in different ways. They faced the distractions of political intrigue, of war, of managing vast responsibilities, of constant demands from others, yet they maintained remarkable focus by maintaining clear hierarchies of value. They knew what mattered most. They knew that virtue and character mattered more than reputation. They knew that wisdom and growth mattered more than comfort. They knew that serving others and acting justly mattered more than personal gain. And those clear values guided their attention through all the noise. You can cultivate this same clarity, not by adopting their exact values necessarily, though their emphasis on virtue remains profoundly relevant, but by doing the work they did, thinking deeply about what you actually care about, writing it down, reminding yourself daily, and then making your attention serve those values rather than betray them. This is the third method for eliminating distraction. Know what you value, clarify your hierarchy, and direct your attention accordingly. Everything that does not serve your true values is distraction, no matter how urgent or appealing it seems. Everything that does serve them deserves your full presence, even if it is difficult or quiet or unrecognized by others. Let this clarity be your guide. The fourth Stoic method for eliminating distraction brings us to one of the most practical and immediate techniques in the Stoic toolkit: the discipline of assent, the practice of questioning your impulses before you follow them. This method recognizes that most distraction does not force itself upon you. You actually choose it, often unconsciously, by following impulses without examining them. The space between feeling an urge and acting on it is where your freedom lives, and learning to widen that space is learning to take control of your attention. Right now, as you hear these words, impulses are moving through you constantly. Maybe an impulse to check your phone, to shift position, to think about something else, to judge what you are hearing, to plan what you will do next. These impulses arise automatically, often without conscious thought. They feel like commands. Check this, do that, think about this other thing. And most people, most of the time, simply obey these commands. An impulse arises to look at your phone, and within seconds the phone is in your hand, though you did not consciously decide to pick it up, though had no real reason to check it. This automatic obedience to impulse is the mechanism of distraction. You do not choose to be distracted in most cases. An impulse arises. You follow it without question, and suddenly you are doing something other than what you intended. The Stoics understood this mechanism and developed a powerful response: the practice of pausing between impulse and action, of questioning whether you truly want to follow where that impulse leads. Epictetus taught that you should treat every impression, every thought, every impulse as a messenger who appears at the door of your mind. The messenger knocks and says, "You should check your phone now," or "You should worry about that thing," or "You should stop this difficult work and do something easier." And Epictetus says, do not simply let every messenger in. Question them. Ask, are you truly in my interest? Do you serve my goals and values? Should I give you my attention? This practice, which the Stoics called the discipline of assent, means training yourself to pause before following impulses, not to suppress them, not to fight them, but simply to examine them before deciding whether to act on them. That pause, that moment of examination, is the thin edge of the wedge that can open up space in your life for genuine choice rather than mechanical reaction. Let me show you how this works with a concrete example. You are working on something that requires focus. An impulse arises. Check your email. This impulse feels urgent, feels like something you should do immediately. For most people, there is no pause between the impulse and the action. The impulse arises and the email program is already opening. But if you practice the discipline of assent, something different happens. The impulse arises and you notice it. You pause just for a moment. You ask, why do I want to check my email right now? What do I think I will find? Is this truly urgent or just an impulse? Does checking email serve what I'm trying to do, or is it a distraction from it? Often, just asking these questions is enough to reveal that the impulse does not actually serve you. You realize you do not need to check email right now. There is no real reason. It is just an impulse, a habit, a way your mind tries to escape the difficulty of focused work. And in recognizing that, you can choose differently. You can decide, no, I will not follow this impulse. I will return my attention to my work. This is a small victory, but your life is built from such small victories. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. In his meditations, he would remind himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Part of what he meant was that obstacles, including the internal obstacle of distraction, become opportunities to practice virtue when you recognize them and choose wisely. Each impulse to distract yourself is an opportunity to practice self-control, to strengthen your capacity to direct your own attention. Each time you pause and choose not to follow the impulse, you are training your mind like an athlete trains their body. The Stoics recognized different categories of impulse, and they taught that you should question them differently. Some impulses arise from genuine needs. Your body is tired and needs rest. You are hungry and need food. These impulses generally deserve your attention, though even here the Stoics counseled moderation and questioning whether you truly need what you crave or whether you are confusing want with need. But many impulses arise not from genuine need, but from habit, from seeking pleasure or avoiding discomfort, from patterns laid down by years of mindless repetition. The impulse to check social media, for example, almost never arises from genuine need. It arises from habit, from the pattern your brain learned when you trained it that seeing notifications or updates provides a tiny hit of dopamine. Your brain learned this pattern and now prompts you to repeat it dozens or hundreds of times per day. But you can unlearn it by practicing the discipline of assent. Each time the impulse arises, you pause, you notice it, you recognize it for what it is, a trained pattern, not a genuine need, and you choose not to follow it. This is not easy at first. The impulse will feel strong, urgent, almost irresistible, but each time you resist, each time you pause and choose differently, the impulse weakens and your capacity for self-direction strengthens. Seneca wrote about this practice in his letters. He described how he would notice impulses toward anger, toward judging others, toward seeking pleasure, toward avoiding difficulty, and he would question these impulses before acting on them. Is this anger actually useful? Will it accomplish anything positive? Or is it just an impulse that will make things worse if I follow it? Does judging this person serve any purpose? Or is it just my ego trying to feel superior? Do I actually need this pleasure I am seeking, or am I just trying to escape something I should face? By questioning his impulses, Seneca gained tremendous power over his own life. He was not at the mercy of every feeling that arose. He could feel anger without acting on it. He could notice a craving without pursuing it. He could recognize an impulse to avoid difficulty without giving in to it. This made him much more effective in the world, much better able to accomplish what he intended because his attention was his own. It was not constantly being hijacked by impulses he never examined. You can begin practicing the discipline of assent today with a very simple technique. For the next hour or the next morning, try this. Every time you feel an impulse to do something other than what you are currently doing, pause for just 3 seconds before acting on it. 3 seconds. Count them if you need to. In those 3 seconds, ask yourself, why am I feeling this impulse? Do I actually want to do this? Does it serve what I am trying to accomplish? Does it align with my values? Often the answer will be yes, and you will follow the impulse with full consciousness and choice. You feel an impulse to get water because you are thirsty. You examine it, recognize it is genuine, and drink. But many times the answer will be no. You feel an impulse to check your phone, but you realize it is just habit, just a way to escape the difficulty of what you are doing. And in recognizing that, you can choose to stay focused. That 3-second pause is the difference between living as a conscious agent who directs their own attention and living as a machine that automatically responds to every stimulus. The Stoics understood that this practice relates directly to freedom. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave, understood better than most what it means to be free and what it means to be enslaved. He taught that true freedom is internal. You are enslaved when your attention is controlled by external forces, when every notification commands you, when every impulse directs you, when you are blown about by desires and aversions you never chose. You are free when you control your attention, when you decide what to focus on and what to ignore, when you can feel an impulse without being controlled by it. This is why the discipline of assent is so crucial for eliminating distraction. Distraction is not just about external interruptions, though those matter. Distraction is mainly about following impulses you never examined, about letting your attention be commanded by forces within and without that you never consciously chose to obey. The discipline of assent gives you back your freedom by giving you back choice. You can feel the impulse and choose whether to follow it. Let me describe what happens as this practice deepens. At first, you will forget to pause. Impulses will arise, and you will follow them automatically, and only later will you remember. I meant to practice noticing impulses and questioning them. That is normal. Do not judge yourself. Simply begin again. Each time you remember, pause and examine the impulse. Over days and weeks, you will remember more often. You will catch yourself following impulses and interrupt the pattern mid-action. You will notice, wait, I am checking my phone. Did I decide to do that? Why am I doing this? As you continue practicing, something shifts. The pause begins to happen automatically. An impulse arises and almost simultaneously, you find yourself questioning it. There is a moment of space, of choice, and in that space you can direct your attention consciously. This is when the practice becomes truly powerful. You are no longer constantly battling distraction. You have trained your mind to naturally question impulses, to maintain a kind of alert consciousness that notices when your attention is about to be pulled away and asks whether you want that to happen. The ancient Stoics described this state as one of the highest achievements of philosophy. Epictetus called it having a mind that is always ready, always awake, always conscious of its own processes. Marcus Aurelius described it as living with clear judgment and voluntary action, as being the commander of your own mind rather than its servant. This might sound advanced, but it begins simply, with practicing a 3-second pause before following impulses. There is another layer to this practice that deepens its power. Not only should you question your impulses in the moment they arise, but you can also examine your patterns over time. At the end of each day, in the spirit of the Stoic Evening Review, you can ask yourself, what impulses did I follow today? Were they in my service or did they distract me? What patterns do I notice? Maybe you realize you check your phone every time your work gets difficult. That is valuable information. Now you know the pattern. Now you can watch for it and interrupt it. Tomorrow, when your work gets difficult and the impulse arises to check your phone, you will recognize, this is the pattern. I want to escape difficulty. But I do not need to follow that impulse. I can stay with the difficulty and find that I am capable of more than I thought. Or maybe you notice you say yes to every request that comes your way, even when those requests pull you away from what you intended to do. That is a pattern of following the impulse to please others, to avoid disappointing people, without questioning whether that impulse serves your actual goals and values. Once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. Tomorrow, when someone asks something of you, you can pause. You can ask, do I actually want to do this? Does it serve what I am trying to accomplish? Or am I just following my habitual impulse to please? And in that pause, you might choose differently. You might say no with kindness, and thereby keep your attention focused on what truly matters to you. The Stoics also taught that you should question not just your impulses to action, but also your impulses of interpretation. An event happens and immediately your mind generates an interpretation. This is terrible, or this is unfair, or this ruins everything. These interpretations are impulses of the mind, automatic judgments that arise before conscious thought, and they shape your experience powerfully. If you automatically interpret every obstacle as terrible, you will live in a state of constant distress. But if you practice the discipline of assent, you can pause even here. An event happens. Your mind says, this is terrible, but you pause. You question that interpretation. You ask, is this truly terrible, or is it just unexpected? Is it an obstacle or an opportunity? What other ways could I interpret this? Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. When something happened that seemed negative, he would immediately question his interpretation. He would remind himself, this is not bad except in my judgment. What if I judged it differently? What if I saw this obstacle as an opportunity to practice virtue, to show patience, to exercise creativity? Often he would find that by changing his interpretation, by refusing to assent to the automatic negative judgment, he could transform his experience of the event. The external facts remained the same, but his attention was no longer hijacked by distress. He remained focused on how to respond virtuously. You can practice this right now with small frustrations. Your computer is slow. Your automatic mind says, "This is frustrating. This is wasting my time." But pause. Question that interpretation. Is this truly worth being frustrated about? Or can you interpret it differently? Maybe this is a moment to practice patience. Maybe this is a reminder to not be so attached to things going exactly as you plan. Maybe this tiny pause is an opportunity to take a breath and remember what you are actually trying to accomplish. By questioning your automatic interpretation, you prevent a small inconvenience from stealing your attention and peace. This is the fourth method. Practice the discipline of assent. Question your impulses before following them. Pause between feeling an urge and acting on it. Examine whether the impulse serves you or whether it is just habit, just a way to escape, just an automatic pattern that does not reflect your actual values and goals. This practice returns your attention to your own command. It gives you space to choose. And in that space of choice, distraction loses its power because you are no longer automatically obeying every impulse that arises. You are free. The fifth Stoic method for eliminating distraction invites you into a practice that may seem paradoxical at first. To imagine losing what you have, to visualize things going wrong, not out of pessimism, but as a path to deeper appreciation and freedom from the anxious clinging that fragments your attention. The Stoics called this negative visualization, and it is one of their most counterintuitive yet powerful techniques for maintaining focus and presence in a world that constantly threatens to distract you through fear of loss. Consider how much of your attention right now is consumed not by what is actually happening, but by worry about what you might lose. You have a relationship that brings you joy, and part of your mind is always anxiously monitoring it, checking for signs that it might end, that the other person might leave, that something might go wrong. You have a job or a reputation or possessions, and threads of your attention are constantly diverted to protecting them, worrying about them, imagining their loss. This anxious preoccupation does not actually protect what you have. It only ensures that you cannot fully enjoy it, cannot be fully present with it, because part of you is always guarding against its disappearance. The Stoics recognized this pattern and offered a radical solution. Instead of trying to suppress your fear of loss, instead of pretending that everything will last forever, deliberately imagine losing what you value. Picture your life without it. Feel what that would be like, and discover something surprising, that you would survive, that you could bear it, that your essential self would remain intact. In discovering this, you free yourself from the anxious clinging that steals your attention. You can enjoy what you have fully, precisely because you are not desperately trying to hold on to it. Epictetus taught this practice with stark clarity. He told his students, when you kiss your child goodnight, remember that they are mortal, that they might not wake tomorrow, that you might not wake tomorrow. This sounds harsh, even cruel. Why would you think such dark thoughts? But Epictetus knew that this practice does not make you love less. It makes you love better. When you remember that your child will not be with you forever, that this moment is precious and irreplaceable, you pay attention. You are present. You do not kiss them distractedly while thinking about something else. You kiss them knowing this might be the last time, and therefore you are fully there. The same applies to everything you value. Your health will not last forever. Your youth is already passing. The people you love will die, or you will die first. Every possession you own will eventually be lost or destroyed. Your reputation will fade. Everything external to you is temporary, uncertain, subject to forces beyond your control. These are not pessimistic thoughts. They are simply true. And pretending they are not true, living as if everything will last forever, is what creates the anxious distraction that robs you of presence. Seneca practiced negative visualization regularly. He would set aside days where he would live as if he had lost his wealth, eating simple food, wearing ordinary clothes, sleeping on a hard bed. He did this not because he wanted to suffer, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he could be happy even without the comforts he enjoyed. He wanted to remove their power over him. As long as he secretly feared that losing his wealth would destroy his happiness, his attention would be partly consumed by protecting that wealth, by worrying about it, by being distracted from what truly matters. But by practicing loss voluntarily, by proving to himself that he could be happy with very little, he freed his attention. He could enjoy his wealth when he had it, but he was not enslaved by it, not distracted by constant worry about keeping it. You can practice this method starting with small things and building toward larger ones. Start by imagining losing something relatively minor that you enjoy. Maybe you have a comfortable home. Take a moment to imagine living somewhere much smaller, or even imagine being homeless, not in a panicked way, but calmly and deliberately. How would you cope? What would you discover about yourself? What would actually matter in that situation? Probably you would realize that your happiness and your character could survive even that loss. You would find a way. And in realizing that, the comfortable home you actually have becomes a source of genuine gratitude rather than anxious clinging. You enjoy it more because you are not desperately attached to it. Practice imagining losing your possessions. Walk through your home and look at your things. Imagine that a fire destroyed everything, or that you lost everything and had to start over with nothing. How would you feel? What would you miss? What would you discover you did not really need? This practice reveals how much of your attention is consumed by things that do not actually matter that much. You realize you are distracted by maintaining, protecting, worrying about things that you could live without, and that realization frees attention for what truly cannot be replaced: your time, your relationships, your growth as a person, your virtue. The Stoics took this practice to its deepest level with the contemplation of death. Memento mori, remember that you will die, was their constant reminder, not to be morbid, but to be realistic. You will die. Everyone you know will die. This is not a possibility, it is a certainty. The only uncertainty is when. And if you truly internalize this fact, if you remember it regularly, it transforms how you use your attention. You stop being distracted by things that will not matter on your deathbed. You stop postponing what is truly important. You stop wasting your irreplaceable time on trivialities. Imagine, vividly and specifically, that you will die 1 year from today. You have 1 year left. How does that change what you focus on? What distractions suddenly seem absurd? What starts to matter more? The Stoics practiced this imagination not to become depressed, but to become focused. When you remember clearly that your time is limited, you spend it more wisely. You are less willing to waste hours scrolling through feeds that will not matter tomorrow. You are less willing to spend energy on grudges and petty concerns. You focus on what will actually matter when you look back. Did you love well? Did you grow? Did you contribute something? Did you live with integrity and presence? Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the vast Roman Empire, kept a skull on his desk as a reminder of mortality. When people came to flatter him, when distractions of power and pride threatened to consume his attention, he would look at that skull and remember, I am mortal. This power is temporary. Soon I will be nothing but bones like this skull. What actually matters? This practice kept him focused on governing wisely, on treating people justly, on growing in wisdom and virtue. The distractions of ego and ambition lost their power when confronted with the reality of death. You do not need a skull on your desk, but you can practice the same remembering. Each morning before you begin your day, take 1 minute to remember clearly, I will die. I do not know when. It could be today or in 50 years, but it is certain. This day is one of a finite number. How do I want to use it? What deserves my attention today? This simple practice eliminates so much distraction because it reveals what actually matters and what only seems to matter because you have forgotten the reality of your mortality. Negative visualization also helps with one of the most seductive forms of distraction, comparing yourself to others, feeling envy or inadequacy, wishing you had what someone else has. The Stoics understood that comparison is a thief of attention and joy. When you are constantly looking at what others have, you cannot be present with what you have. Your attention is always elsewhere, always distracted by imagining a different life. But negative visualization cuts through this by helping you appreciate what you actually have, rather than taking it for granted while you envy what you lack. Practice this. Instead of comparing yourself to people who have more than you, compare yourself to people who have less, or imagine yourself with less than you currently have. You see someone with a bigger house and feel envious, distracted by wanting what they have. But pause. Practice negative visualization. Imagine you lost your current home and were living on the street. Suddenly, your actual home, which seemed inadequate a moment ago, reveals itself as an incredible blessing. You have shelter, warmth, safety, things that millions of people lack. The distraction of envy dissolves in the face of genuine gratitude. The same works with any area where comparison distracts you. Someone else has a more impressive career and you feel inadequate, distracted by wishing you had achieved more. But practice negative visualization. Imagine you lost your health and could not work at all. Suddenly the career you have, the ability to work and contribute, reveals itself as precious. Or someone has a romantic relationship that seems perfect while you are single or struggling. Practice imagining that you had never met anyone, that you were completely alone. Suddenly, the relationships you do have, even if imperfect, or the freedom and possibility of being single, reveal their value. This is not about settling or giving up on growth. The Stoics were ambitious in their own way, always striving to grow in wisdom and virtue, but they did not let ambition distract them from appreciating what they had. They could strive for improvement while remaining grateful for the present. That balance kept them focused. They were not constantly distracted by feeling that the present is inadequate, that they need to be elsewhere or have something else before they can be content. Another form of negative visualization involves imagining the people you love dying or leaving. This is difficult, perhaps the most difficult form of the practice, but the Stoics insisted it was necessary. Seneca wrote to his friend, "Remind yourself that you love a mortal, that you love something that is not your own. It has been loaned to you for an indeterminate time, to be returned whenever the lender wishes. You should love your family as one who must lose them." This sounds cold, but it is actually the opposite. It is a call to love more fully, more presently, because you remember that time is limited. When you practice this, you discover that you have been taking people for granted, that you have been distracted during time with them, that you have been saving real connection for later, as if later is guaranteed. But it is not. The person you love might die tomorrow, or you might. And in remembering that, you wake up, you pay attention, you stop being distracted during conversations by thinking about something else. You stop postponing real talk, real presence, real love. You bring your full attention to this moment with this person because you know clearly and deeply that you are not guaranteed another moment. This does not make you clingy or desperate. Paradoxically, it makes you more able to enjoy relationships with peace because you have already faced the worst possibility and found that you could survive it. You love fully, but not desperately. You enjoy people's presence without the anxious underlying attempt to control whether they stay. And that removes a huge source of distraction in relationships. The constant monitoring, the anxious checking, the worry that has nothing to do with what is actually happening right now and everything to do with fear of future loss. The regular practice of negative visualization transforms your relationship to everything in your life. Things become gifts rather than possessions you must desperately cling to. Moments become precious rather than endless, and therefore ignorable. People become miracles you are grateful to know rather than fixtures you take for granted. And in that transformation, your attention becomes more focused, more present, because you are not constantly distracted by the anxious work of trying to prevent loss. You know loss will come. You have imagined it, faced it, found that you can bear it, and so you are free to fully enjoy what you have while you have it. This is the fifth method. Practice negative visualization. Regularly imagine losing what you value. Imagine your own death and the death of those you love. Imagine things going wrong, possessions lost, status diminished. Not to make yourself miserable, but to wake yourself up, to free yourself from anxious clinging, to reveal what truly matters and what only seems to matter. In facing loss in imagination, you free your attention for full presence with what you actually have. You stop being distracted by fear and wake up to gratitude. And that gratitude, rooted in the clear knowledge that nothing lasts forever, focuses your attention powerfully on this moment, this day, this precious and irreplaceable now. The sixth Stoic method for eliminating distraction from your life asks you to establish a deliberate practice that the ancient Stoics held sacred, the morning ritual, a conscious and intentional beginning to each day that sets the tone for everything that follows. This method recognizes that how you begin your day largely determines how the day unfolds, and that most distraction takes root in those first moments when you are still unclear about your purpose, your values, your intentions for the hours ahead. Think about how you typically begin your day. For many people in the modern world, the pattern is this. You wake to an alarm, and before your feet even touch the floor, before you have taken a full conscious breath, your hand reaches for your phone. And in that moment, before you have set any intention for your own day, you invite the entire world into your mind. Messages from other people with their own agendas for your time. News designed to provoke anxiety or outrage. Social media showing you curated glimpses of other people's lives, inviting comparison and envy. Emails presenting problems and demands. All of this floods into your consciousness before you have asked yourself even once, who do I want to be today? What matters most to me? How do I want to use this precious day? When you begin your day by immediately consuming input from the external world, you set yourself up for a day of reaction and distraction. You have trained your mind to look outward for direction rather than inward. You have started the day in a state of fragmentation rather than intention. The Stoics understood this danger and developed morning practices specifically designed to center your mind, clarify your values, and set strong intentions before engaging with the world's demands. Marcus Aurelius had one of the most powerful morning practices ever recorded. Before rising from bed, while lying there in the pre-dawn darkness, he would remind himself of fundamental truths. He would remember that he was going to encounter difficult people today, people who were annoying, ungrateful, violent, treacherous. But he would remind himself that these people act from ignorance of what is truly good, that they are still his brothers in reason, that none of them can actually harm his character unless he lets them. He would remind himself that he was born to work together with others, not to be irritated by them. He would remind himself that getting upset would hurt him more than whatever they do could hurt him. Look at what Marcus is doing. He is not checking messages to see what others want from him. He is not consuming news to see what he should be worried about. He is orienting himself from his own center, from his own values. He is preparing his mind for the day by rehearsing how he wants to respond to challenges rather than being caught off guard by them. This is not a luxury he enjoyed because he was emperor. This is a practice that helped him be an effective emperor despite overwhelming demands on his attention. You can create your own morning ritual starting today. It does not need to be elaborate or time-consuming. Even 15 minutes of intentional practice before you engage with the external world can transform your day. The key is to do something that centers you, that reminds you of your values, that sets clear intentions before the world starts making demands on your attention. One powerful element of a Stoic morning ritual is meditation, but not necessarily in the way you might think. The Stoics practiced philosophical meditation, which means taking time to think deeply about fundamental truths, to remind yourself of what matters, to orient your mind toward virtue and wisdom. This might mean reading a short passage from a philosophical text and reflecting on it. It might mean writing in a journal about your values and intentions. It might mean simply sitting quietly and asking yourself questions. What kind of person do I want to be today? What do I value most? What deserves my attention? What should I ignore? Seneca practiced a form of morning meditation where he would imagine the day ahead and prepare mentally for it. He would think through what he needed to do, what challenges might arise, what temptations might present themselves, and he would decide in advance how he would handle these situations. If someone is rude to me today, I will respond with patience and understanding rather than anger. If I am tempted to pursue pleasure at the expense of what matters, I will remember my values and choose differently. If I face difficulty, I will see it as an opportunity to practice courage and wisdom. By making these decisions in advance in a calm and reflective state, he made it much more likely that he would act according to his values when the actual situations arose later. You can practice this same preparation. Take a few minutes each morning to think through your day. What are you trying to accomplish? What challenges might you face? What might distract you? And how do you want to respond? Decide now, while you are calm and clear, so that when the moments arrive, you are prepared rather than reactive. This simple practice dramatically reduces distraction because you have created a kind of roadmap for your attention. You know where you intend it to go, and when something tries to pull it elsewhere, you can recognize that and choose whether to follow. Another essential element of a Stoic morning ritual is reminding yourself of the dichotomy of control. Before the day begins, remember clearly, Some things are within my control and some things are not. What is within my control? My thoughts, my choices, my efforts, my character. What is not within my control? Other people's thoughts and actions, outcomes, past events, future uncertainties. Today I will focus my attention on what I can control and accept what I cannot. This reminder, renewed each morning, keeps you from wasting attention on things you never could change. The Stoics also emphasized beginning each day with gratitude. Before you think about what you need to do or what problems you need to solve, pause to appreciate what you have. You woke up this morning. You have this day, which not everyone received. You have capacities, opportunities, people you love. Even if your life has significant challenges, there are things to be grateful for. Starting the day with gratitude orients your attention toward appreciation rather than lack, toward what you have rather than what you want. And that shift in orientation reduces the distraction of constantly feeling that something is missing, that you need to be somewhere else, that the present is inadequate. A practical morning ritual might look something like this. You wake and instead of reaching for your phone, you sit up and take 3 deep breaths. You remember, I am alive today. This day is precious and finite. You spend 5 minutes reading something that reminds you of your values, maybe a passage from Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus or any wisdom tradition that resonates with you. You reflect on that passage. What does it mean for today? How can I apply this? You spend another 5 minutes writing in a journal, perhaps answering these questions. What are my 3 most important priorities today? What challenges might arise and how will I respond? What kind of person do I want to be today? You close your eyes for a final minute and visualize yourself moving through the day with focus, presence, and virtue. Only then, after you have established your own center and set your intentions, do you open your phone or computer and engage with the world. This might sound like too much, especially if you are used to rolling out of bed with barely enough time to rush through your morning. But consider what you are really saying if you claim you do not have 15 minutes for a morning practice. You are saying that you do not have 15 minutes to orient yourself toward what matters, to set intentions, to prepare your mind, yet you probably spend at least 15 minutes, likely far more, scrolling through your phone at various points in the day, consuming content that does not serve you, being distracted. The question is not whether you have time, the question is what you prioritize. The Stoics would argue that the morning ritual is not time taken away from your productive day. It is the foundation that makes your day productive. Without it, you are like an archer who shoots arrows without aiming. You might hit something, but probably not what you actually intended. With it, you are aiming first, choosing your target, and then acting. That is the difference between a day of distraction and reaction versus a day of intention and purpose. If 15 minutes feels impossible, start smaller. Start with 5 minutes. Start with 2 minutes. The specific duration matters less than establishing the pattern of intentional beginning. Even 1 minute of conscious breathing and intention setting before you grab your phone is infinitely better than 0 minutes. Start where you can and let the practice grow as you experience its benefits. Another powerful element of the morning ritual is physical practice. The Stoics understood that the mind and body are connected, that how you treat your body affects your mental clarity and focus. They practiced moderation and often engaged in physical exercise as part of their philosophical practice. A morning routine that includes some physical movement, even just stretching or a short walk, helps wake your body and mind, helps you inhabit the present moment rather than immediately flying off into abstract thoughts and worries. Consider adding some form of physical practice to your morning ritual. It does not need to be intense exercise, though that is valuable too. It can be as simple as conscious stretching, paying attention to your body, noticing areas of tension and breathing into them, or a short walk outside if possible, noticing the air, the light, the sounds, practicing being fully present in your body and in the world, rather than lost in thought. This physical element grounds you and makes it easier to maintain focus throughout the day because you have established a connection with the present moment, with your actual embodied existence rather than just the abstract world of thoughts and screens. The Stoics also practiced cold exposure as part of their morning ritual, deliberately subjecting themselves to discomfort to train their minds. Seneca would bathe in cold water, others would go outside in minimal clothing in cold weather. The purpose was not to suffer, but to practice voluntary discomfort, to train themselves that they could endure what they initially wanted to avoid, to build mental strength, and to reduce the power of comfort-seeking to distract them from what matters. You might incorporate a version of this by ending your morning shower with cold water, or stepping outside before you are fully warm, or sitting in a slightly uncomfortable position during your meditation. These small discomforts train your mind to tolerate difficulty rather than immediately seeking distraction when something feels uncomfortable. What makes a morning ritual specifically stoic, as opposed to just a generic morning routine, is the content and intention. It is not just about productivity or energy, though those benefits follow. It is about virtue, about aligning yourself with wisdom and justice and courage and temperance. It is about reminding yourself that you are mortal, that your time is limited, that your character matters more than external outcomes. It is about preparing yourself to meet whatever happens with equanimity and virtue rather than with reaction and distraction. Your morning ritual should reflect your actual values. If you value wisdom, include reading something wise. If you value presence, include a practice of mindfulness or meditation. If you value gratitude, include writing down what you are grateful for. If you value service, include reminding yourself how you can help others today. The ritual is not about following someone else's formula. It is about creating a practice that reminds you each morning of who you want to be and what you truly care about. The discipline of the morning ritual also trains your capacity to do what you decided to do even when you do not feel like it. Some mornings you will wake up and not want to do your practice. You will want to just grab your phone, to stay in bed, to skip it just this once. And this is precisely when the practice is most valuable. When you do it anyway, when you keep your commitment to yourself despite not feeling like it, you are training self-discipline. You are proving to yourself that your actions can be guided by your values and decisions rather than by your fluctuating feelings and impulses. That training transfers to the rest of your day. When you are tempted to be distracted, to give in to an impulse, to avoid something difficult, you remember, I practiced discipline this morning. I can practice it now. Over time, the morning ritual becomes a foundation you can count on. Your days may vary, circumstances may change, challenges may come and go, but you have this practice, this time that is yours, this daily return to center. That consistency itself reduces distraction because you always know you have a time and place to reorient yourself. If you get distracted during the day, if you lose your way, you know that tomorrow morning you will return to your practice, to your values, to your intentions. That knowledge makes it easier to let go of mistakes and move forward, rather than being distracted by rumination and regret. The ancient Stoics lived in times where distractions were different but no less pressing. Marcus Aurelius woke to the demands of empire, to military campaigns, to political intrigue, to constant requests for his attention and judgment. Yet he maintained his morning practice, his time of philosophical reflection and preparation. This practice is what allowed him to navigate those enormous demands without losing his center, without being fragmented by distraction. If he could maintain a morning ritual while governing Rome, you can maintain one in your life. This is the sixth method. Establish a morning ritual. Begin each day with intention rather than reaction. Take time, even just a few minutes, to remind yourself of your values, to set intentions, to prepare mentally for challenges, to practice gratitude. Do this before you engage with the world's demands. Create a consistent practice that centers you and orients your attention toward what truly matters. This foundation makes everything else easier. It is not time taken away from your productive day. It is the practice that makes your day truly productive by ensuring your attention serves your values rather than being scattered by every demand and distraction that arises. Start tomorrow. Start with whatever time you can give, and experience how a day that begins with intention unfolds differently than a day that begins with reaction. The seventh Stoic method for eliminating distractions serves as the bookend to the morning ritual and is equally powerful. The evening review, a practice of looking back over your day with honest reflection, without harsh judgment, learning from what happened, so that tomorrow you can live with greater focus and wisdom. This practice recognizes that you cannot improve what you do not examine, and that most people go through life on autopilot, repeating the same patterns of distraction day after day because they never pause to actually reflect on those patterns and choose differently. Seneca wrote extensively about the evening review. He described how each night before sleeping he would mentally review his entire day. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short? What opportunities did I miss? Where was I distracted? Where did I act according to my values and where did I betray them? He would examine specific interactions, specific choices, specific moments where his attention wandered or where he failed to live according to his principles. But crucially, he did not do this to torture himself with guilt. He did it to learn, to notice patterns, to prepare himself to do better tomorrow. This evening review is not about perfectionism or self-criticism. It is about honest observation and gentle correction. You are not judging yourself as good or bad, success or failure. You are simply looking at what happened and asking, did my actions today align with my values? Did I use my attention wisely? Where was I distracted and why? What can I learn from this? The tone should be curious and compassionate, like a wise teacher reviewing the work of a student they care about, pointing out mistakes not to shame but to help improve. Let me walk you through how you might practice the evening review starting tonight. Set aside 10 to 15 minutes before you go to sleep. Sit somewhere quiet where you will not be disturbed. Begin by taking a few deep breaths to settle your mind. Then walk through your day chronologically from the moment you woke up. Not every minute, but the significant moments, the choices you made, the times when you were focused or distracted. Start with your morning. Did you practice your morning ritual? If yes, how did it affect your day? If no, why not? What pulled you away from it? Be specific. Maybe you intended to do your practice, but you checked your phone first and got pulled into reading news or messages, and suddenly your morning was gone. Observe that. That is valuable information. You learned that checking your phone derails your morning practice. So tomorrow you might put your phone in another room overnight so you are not tempted. Move through the morning hours. When you started your work or your day's activities, were you focused or were you scattered before you even began? If you were scattered, what caused that? Maybe you tried to do too many things at once. Maybe you did not clarify your priorities. Maybe you let other people's urgent demands override your important work. Whatever the cause, observe it without judgment. Just notice. This is what happened. This is what pulled my attention away. Think about specific moments of distraction during your day. Maybe you were working on something important when an urge arose to check social media. Did you resist that urge or follow it? If you followed it, what happened next? Did you check quickly and return to work, or did you get pulled into scrolling for 20 minutes? If you got pulled in, what was the experience like? Did it actually satisfy you, or did it leave you feeling empty and guilty? Be honest with yourself. Most of the time, these distractions do not actually satisfy us. They are habits we follow without questioning, and then we feel worse afterward. Seeing this clearly helps you choose differently tomorrow. Consider your interactions with other people. Were you present with them or distracted? When someone spoke to you, did you listen fully or was part of your mind elsewhere? If you were distracted during conversations, why? Maybe you were thinking about your own response instead of really listening. Maybe you were worried about something else. Maybe you were just habitually checking your phone even while someone was talking. Whatever the cause, notice it. Tomorrow you can try something different. Tomorrow, when someone speaks to you, you can practice putting your phone away, making eye contact, actually listening. But you can only make that choice if you first notice the pattern. Think about how you spent your leisure time today. Did you do things that genuinely rejuvenated you, that aligned with your values, that you are glad you did? Or did you fall into passive consumption, scrolling or watching things that you will not even remember tomorrow? Again, no judgment, just observation. If you spent 2 hours on activities you do not even value, that is useful information. Why did you do that? Maybe you were avoiding something difficult. Maybe you were tired and took the path of least resistance. Maybe you have a habit you have not examined. Whatever the reason, now you know. Tomorrow, you can choose differently because you have seen the pattern clearly. The Stoics were particularly interested in reviewing moments of strong emotion during the day. Did you get angry today? Anxious, frustrated, envious? If so, what triggered those emotions? Can you see now, with some distance from the event, that your interpretation of what happened created the emotion rather than the event itself creating it? Marcus Aurelius would note when he felt angry and then question whether the anger had been useful or justified. Usually he would conclude that it had not been, that he had let his peace be disturbed by something external that was not actually worth that disturbance. By reviewing these moments, he trained himself to recognize similar situations more quickly in the future and to choose a different response. If you experienced strong negative emotions today, examine them in your evening review. Suppose someone criticized you and you felt hurt and defensive. Now, looking back, can you see that their criticism is just their opinion, which you do not have to accept? Can you see that maybe there was a kernel of truth worth considering, but not worth the hours of anguish you spent on it? Can you see that you let their words distract you from what you were trying to do, that you gave them power over your attention and peace? Seeing this clearly helps you respond differently next time. Next time someone criticizes you, you might pause, consider whether there is anything useful in the criticism, and then return to your work without letting it derail you. The evening review should also include acknowledging what you did well. This is important because the practice is not just about finding fault, it is about noticing everything, including your successes, your moments of virtue, your times of good focus. Did you resist a distraction today? Did you stay focused on difficult work when you could have quit? Did you treat someone with patience and kindness when you felt irritated? Did you practice any of the STOIC methods you have been learning? Notice these victories, even small ones. Appreciate them. They are evidence that you are growing, that you are capable of directing your attention and living according to your values. Seneca emphasized that the evening review should end with a kind of resolution or commitment for tomorrow. Based on what you learned today, what will you try to do differently tomorrow? Be specific. Not vague resolutions like, I will be less distracted, but concrete decisions like, tomorrow when I feel the urge to check my phone while working, I will pause for 3 seconds and ask whether it serves my intention before I act. Or, tomorrow I will put my phone in another room during my morning ritual so I'm not tempted to check it. Or, tomorrow when my colleague speaks to me, I will practice stopping what I am doing and giving them my full attention. These concrete commitments made during your evening review dramatically increase your chances of actually changing behavior. You have identified a pattern, understood it, and decided specifically what you will do differently. When the situation arises tomorrow, you are prepared. You remember, I decided I would do this differently, and that memory makes it much more likely that you will follow through. One powerful version of the evening review comes from Epictetus, who taught his students to examine their day using 3 questions. What did I do that I should not have done? What did I fail to do that I should have done? What did I do well that I should continue? These 3 questions cover everything. Actions you took that did not align with your values, actions you avoided that would have aligned with your values, and actions you took that did align. Asking these 3 questions each evening gives you a complete picture of your day from the perspective of your values and growth. You might expand each question. What did I do that I should not have done? Maybe I wasted an hour arguing with strangers online about something that does not matter. Why did I do that? What need was I trying to meet? Maybe I was seeking validation, or maybe I was avoiding something difficult. How can I meet that need differently tomorrow? What did I fail to do that I should have done? Maybe I intended to work on my most important project, but I avoided it all day and did easier tasks instead. Why did I avoid it? Maybe it feels overwhelming. How can I make it less overwhelming tomorrow? Maybe I can break it into smaller pieces. What did I do well? Maybe I practiced my morning ritual consistently. Maybe I was patient with someone who was difficult. I should continue these practices because they serve me. The evening review also helps you notice progress over time. If you keep a journal of your reviews, even just brief notes, you can look back after weeks or months and see patterns. You might notice that you have become significantly better at resisting certain distractions. You might notice that you are more often aligned with your values. You might notice that some problems have resolved while new challenges have emerged. This long-term perspective is encouraging and instructive. You can see that you are actually growing, actually changing, that these practices work over time even when individual days feel difficult. There is also a beautiful simplicity to the evening review as practiced by Marcus Aurelius. Sometimes in his journal he would write just a few words noting what he was working on internally. Today I practiced not being disturbed by difficult people. Or, today I remembered that I cannot control outcomes, only my efforts. These brief notes were his evening review, his way of marking what he was learning, what he was practicing. You can practice the same simplicity. You do not need to write pages. Even a few sentences capturing the day's key lessons can be valuable. The evening review also serves as a kind of closure for the day. You review what happened, you learn from it, and then you let it go. You do not need to ruminate or regret or worry. You looked at it honestly. You extracted the lessons. You made commitments for tomorrow. Now you can rest. This helps with sleep, helps you stop the endless mental chatter that keeps many people awake. Your mind does not need to keep chewing on the day's events because you already processed them consciously. You can let go. Some nights you will resist the evening review. You will be tired. You will want to just collapse into bed or zone out in front of a screen. On those nights especially, do the practice. It does not need to be long. Even 5 minutes is valuable. Those nights when you least feel like reviewing your day are often the nights when you most need to, because something about the day was difficult or uncomfortable, and your resistance to reviewing it is resistance to facing whatever you did not want to see. But facing it, even briefly, even gently, frees you from it. What you avoid owns you. What you examine and accept loses its power. The ancient Stoics believed that philosophy is not just theory, but daily practice, and the evening review is perhaps the most practical of all their exercises. It takes the abstract principles of Stoicism and applies them specifically to your actual life. It answers the question, how am I actually doing? Not how I think I am doing, or how I hope I am doing, but actually, based on my actions and choices today, how aligned am I with my values? That honest answer, renewed each evening, keeps you on track. It prevents you from drifting, from telling yourself stories about who you are that your actions do not support. This is the 7th method. Practice the evening review. Each night before sleep, take time to look back honestly over your day. What did you do well? Where were you distracted? What pulled your attention away from what matters? What can you learn? What will you do differently tomorrow? Do this with curiosity and compassion, not with harsh judgment. The purpose is growth, not guilt. You are training yourself to notice patterns, to learn from experience, to continually refine how you use your attention. Combined with the morning ritual, this practice creates a daily rhythm of intention and reflection that dramatically reduces distraction over time. You set intentions each morning and review how you did each evening. In that rhythm, you gradually become more and more the conscious director of your own attention and less the passive recipient of whatever distracts you. The 8th Stoic method for eliminating distraction from your life might initially seem counterintuitive or even uncomfortable. It is the practice of voluntary discomfort, of deliberately choosing difficulty, of training yourself through small acts of self-denial and endurance so that your attention is not constantly being hijacked by the pursuit of comfort or the avoidance of difficulty. The Stoics understood something profound, that much of your distraction comes from habitually seeking the easy path, the comfortable choice, the pleasant option, and that by practicing voluntary discomfort, you can build a mind that is not enslaved to comfort-seeking and therefore not constantly distracted by it. Think about how much of your day is shaped by the pursuit of comfort and the avoidance of discomfort. You have an important but difficult task to do, and your mind immediately generates a dozen reasons why you should do something easier first. You know you should have a difficult conversation, but you postpone it because it will be uncomfortable. You intend to focus on deep work, but when the work gets challenging, an urge arises to check your phone, to get a snack, to do anything other than sit with the difficulty. Your attention is constantly being pulled away from what matters toward what is easier, more comfortable, more immediately pleasant. This is natural. Your brain evolved to conserve energy and seek pleasure and avoid pain. But what served your ancestors in the wilderness does not serve you in the modern world, where the threats are not predators and starvation, but distraction and a life of comfort that never builds anything meaningful. The Stoics recognized that if you always follow the path of least resistance, you will develop a weak mind that cannot focus when focus requires effort, that cannot persist when persistence requires discomfort. The solution is not to make yourself miserable or to seek suffering for its own sake. The Stoics were not masochists. The solution is to practice voluntary discomfort in small, deliberate ways so that you build mental strength, so that you prove to yourself that you can choose difficulty when difficulty serves your values, so that comfort seeking loses its power to constantly distract you. This is like going to the gym for your mind. You lift weights not because carrying heavy things is fun, but because the practice makes you stronger for when you need that strength. Seneca practiced this regularly. He would set aside certain days where he would eat only simple food, wear plain clothes, live as if he were poor. He did this not because he wanted to suffer, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he could be happy with very little, that his peace did not depend on luxuries, that he could endure discomfort without falling apart. He wrote that we should set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" By voluntarily practicing difficulty, he removed its power to frighten him into distraction and avoidance. You can practice this same principle starting with small challenges. The point is not to make yourself miserable, but to build capacity, to train your mind that it can handle difficulty, that you do not need to immediately seek comfort whenever something feels hard. Here are some ways to practice voluntary discomfort that can help eliminate distraction. First, practice physical discomfort in small doses. The Stoics often practiced cold exposure. Seneca would bathe in cold water. Marcus Aurelius would go outside in cold weather without adequate clothing. The purpose was not to get sick, but to train the mind to endure what it initially resists. You can practice a simple version of this by ending your shower with cold water. Start with just 30 seconds. Feel the resistance, the voice in your head that says, "Turn it back to hot. This is uncomfortable. Why are you doing this?" But stay with the cold. Breathe. Notice that you can tolerate it. Notice that the discomfort, while real, is not unbearable. Notice how your mind generates urgency about ending the discomfort, but that you can choose not to obey that urgency. This tiny practice transfers to the rest of your life. When you are working on something difficult and your mind generates urgency about doing something easier, you remember, "I practiced sitting with discomfort in the shower. I can sit with it now. I do not need to obey every impulse to seek comfort." This builds your capacity to stay focused even when focus is uncomfortable, even when your work feels hard and every impulse pulls you toward distraction. Another practice is choosing minor physical discomforts throughout your day. Sit in a slightly uncomfortable position during your meditation or work. Feel hunger for a while before you eat. Let yourself feel cold or hot for a period before adjusting the temperature. Walk instead of drive when possible, especially if the weather is not perfect. These are not major hardships. They are small choices to not immediately seek comfort, to let yourself experience discomfort and notice that you survive it fine. Each time you do this, you are weakening the power of comfort seeking to distract you. The Stoics also practiced voluntary simplicity. They would occasionally give up luxuries to remind themselves that they did not need them. Epictetus, who had been a slave and therefore knew poverty, taught that we should imagine losing our possessions and practice living with less. You can practice this by occasionally choosing the simpler option even when you could afford better. Eat a simple meal instead of ordering elaborate food. Wear simple clothes. Entertain yourself with simple activities instead of expensive or elaborate ones. The purpose is to prove to yourself that happiness does not depend on these externals, that you can be content with very little, and therefore that you do not need to be distracted by constantly seeking more, better, fancier things. Another powerful practice is to deliberately do difficult things when you could do easy things. Choose the harder workout when you could do an easy one. Choose to walk up the stairs when you could take the elevator. Choose to have the difficult conversation today instead of postponing it. Choose to work on your hardest task first instead of doing easy tasks to warm up. Each time you choose difficulty voluntarily, you are training your mind that difficulty is not something to be automatically avoided, and that training makes it easier to stay focused on what matters even when it is hard. This practice directly addresses one of the primary mechanisms of distraction. You get distracted when you are doing something difficult, and your mind offers you the tempting thought. You could do something easier right now. You could check your phone. You could get a snack. You could do a simpler task. You could stop working. If you habitually follow those thoughts, if you always choose comfort over difficulty, you train your mind that the slightest discomfort is a signal to stop and seek relief. But if you practice voluntary discomfort, if you prove to yourself again and again that you can sit with difficulty and even choose it sometimes, you break that pattern. The thought arises to seek easier options, but you recognize it as just a thought, just an impulse, not a command you must obey. The Stoics understood that this practice also builds self-respect and confidence. When you know you can handle difficulty, when you have proven it to yourself through practice, you trust yourself more. You believe in your capacity to do hard things. And that belief makes it easier to commit to difficult work, to long-term projects, to growth that requires sustained effort. If you doubt your ability to persist through difficulty, you will be constantly distracted by that doubt, constantly wondering if you should quit, constantly tempted by easier paths. But if you have trained through voluntary discomfort, you know, I can do this. I have done hard things before. This is just another challenge I can face. There is also a practice the Stoics called negative visualization that relates to voluntary discomfort. They would regularly imagine losing their comforts, their possessions, their status. They would imagine being poor, being sick, being alone. Not in an anxious way, but in a preparatory way, training their minds to accept that these possibilities exist and that they could endure them if necessary. This mental practice of voluntary discomfort served the same purpose as physical practice. It removed the power of fear and comfort-seeking to control their attention. You can practice this by occasionally imagining that you have lost things you rely on for comfort. Imagine your home was much smaller or less comfortable. Could you be content? Imagine you lost your source of income. How would you cope? Imagine you lost various comforts you take for granted. By imagining these scenarios calmly, you reduce their power to frighten you, and you reduce your dependence on those comforts for your peace of mind. Your attention is freed from the anxious work of protecting your comforts because you have faced the possibility of losing them and found that you would be okay. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor with access to every luxury, practiced living simply. He would remind himself that purple robes are just sheep's wool dyed in shellfish blood. Expensive food is just dead plants and animals. Luxuries are just material things that do not actually touch the essential self. By seeing through the allure of comfort and luxury, by practicing simplicity even when he could have had anything, he kept his mind free from the distraction of constantly seeking more comfort, more luxury, more pleasure. Modern life makes this practice especially important because we are surrounded by infinite options for comfort and pleasure. You can have any food delivered, you can watch any entertainment instantly, you can adjust your environment to perfect comfort. You can escape any momentary boredom or difficulty with a tap on your phone. This easy access to comfort and distraction makes it very difficult to build the capacity to sit with discomfort, to focus on what matters, even when it is hard. You need deliberate practice to counteract this. One specific practice is to create periods of intentional restriction. Maybe once a week you have a day where you use no entertainment media, no shows, no social media, no games, no casual internet browsing. Just that. Just one day without those comfort distractions. See what happens. See what you do instead. See how your mind reacts to not having easy escape routes. This practice reveals how dependent you have become on certain distractions and begins to break that dependence. Or practice periods of silence and solitude. The Stoics valued time alone with their thoughts. Modern people often fill every moment with input, with noise, with distraction, because silence and solitude feel uncomfortable. Your own thoughts can be uncomfortable company, but practice sitting in silence without any distractions. No phone, no book, no music, just sitting. This will be difficult at first. Your mind will generate all kinds of reasons why you should be doing something else, but practice staying with it. This builds your capacity to be with yourself, to tolerate your own mind, to not need constant external stimulation to be okay, and that capacity is fundamental to eliminating distraction. The practice of voluntary discomfort also includes choosing challenge in your work and growth. Instead of always choosing the comfortable path of doing what you already know how to do, deliberately choose to do things that stretch you, that make you uncomfortable because you are not yet competent at them. Learning something new is uncomfortable. Doing work at the edge of your abilities is uncomfortable. Receiving critical feedback is uncomfortable. But these discomforts are precisely where growth happens. By choosing them voluntarily rather than avoiding them, you grow faster and you train your mind to associate difficulty with opportunity rather than with something to escape through distraction. Epictetus taught that every difficulty is an opportunity to practice virtue. When you face something hard, you have an opportunity to practice courage. When you are tempted by comfort or pleasure, you have an opportunity to practice self-control. When someone treats you badly, you have an opportunity to practice patience and forgiveness. By seeing difficulty this way, as opportunity rather than as threat, you change your relationship to discomfort. You stop being distracted by constantly trying to avoid it, and you start being focused on what you can learn and practice within it. This is the 8th method. Practice voluntary discomfort. Choose small challenges regularly. Do not always take the comfortable path. Practice cold showers or other minor physical discomforts. Choose simplicity sometimes, even when you could afford luxury. Do difficult work when you could do easy work. Sit with boredom and silence instead of immediately seeking distraction. Imagine losing your comforts and practice that you would be okay. Through these practices, you build a mind that is not enslaved to comfort seeking. a mind that can focus on what matters even when it is difficult, a mind that does not need to constantly be distracted by seeking ease. This strength, this capacity to embrace difficulty, is one of the most powerful tools for eliminating distraction because so much distraction is just comfort-seeking in disguise. The 9th Stoic method for eliminating distraction from your life introduces you to one of the most profound and transformative practices in the entire Stoic tradition, the cultivation of apatheia, often mistranslated as apathy but actually meaning something far richer and more powerful. Apatheia is inner stillness, a state of mind not disturbed by passions and external events, a deep equanimity that allows you to remain focused and present regardless of circumstances. This is not cold indifference or lack of caring. It is freedom from being tossed about by every wave of emotion, every external change, every provocation. To understand why apatheia is essential for eliminating distraction, consider how much of your fractured attention comes from emotional turbulence. Someone criticizes you, and for hours or days your mind churns with hurt and anger, replaying the criticism, composing responses, unable to focus on anything else. You see something you want and desire consumes you, pulling your attention away from what you were doing into fantasizing about having it. You experience a small setback and anxiety floods in, scattering your focus across worst-case scenarios. Good news arrives and you become so excited you cannot concentrate. These emotional swings, these passions, as the Stoics called them, are major sources of distraction because they hijack your attention away from your chosen focus and toward whatever triggered the emotion. The Stoics taught that most emotions, especially the intense and disturbing ones, arise not from events themselves, but from your judgments about events. An event happens, someone insults you. That event is neutral in itself, but your mind immediately judges, this is terrible, this is unfair, this diminishes me. That judgment creates anger and hurt. The distraction is not really caused by the insult, but by your judgment about it and the emotions that judgment generates. If you could observe the insult without that automatic judging, if you could see it as just words someone spoke, arising from their own confusion and ignorance, the insult would pass through your awareness like wind through a net. Your attention would remain steady, focused on what you choose to focus on. Apatheia is the practice of training your mind to not automatically generate these disturbing judgments and emotions. It is developing the capacity to observe what happens with equanimity, to feel emotions without being controlled by them, to maintain inner stillness even when external circumstances are chaotic. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to feel them. The Stoics were not teaching emotional suppression, which is harmful. They were teaching emotional wisdom, the ability to feel emotions without being enslaved by them, to notice when emotions arise, and to question the judgments that created them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. He would remind himself, things do not touch the soul. External events cannot disturb your inner peace unless you let them. He wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This is the core insight of apatheia. Your disturbance, your distraction, comes from your interpretation and judgment, and you can change that interpretation. You can choose a judgment that maintains your peace rather than one that destroys it. How do you practice cultivating apatheia in your daily life? It begins with noticing when you are disturbed and pausing to examine what judgment created that disturbance. Something happens and you feel angry. Stop. Notice the anger. Ask, what am I telling myself about this situation that is creating this anger? Often you will find you are telling yourself something like, this should not have happened, this is unfair, this is a personal attack on me. But are those judgments necessarily true? What if you told yourself instead, this happened as it was always going to happen given the causes and conditions. The other person acted from their own nature and circumstances. This has nothing to do with my essential worth. With that different judgment, the anger has no fuel. It may still arise as an initial feeling, but it does not consume you. The practice is not to force yourself to adopt artificially positive judgments. It is to question your automatic negative judgments and to see if they are actually true and actually helpful. Most of the time they are neither. You judge something as terrible when it is actually just inconvenient. You judge something as unfair when fairness is a concept you invented and the universe never promised to conform to. You judge something as threatening your essential self when actually your essential self, your character, your faculty of choice cannot be touched by external events at all unless you consent. Epictetus taught his students to practice this with everything that happened. When something occurs, immediately ask, is this within my control or outside it? If it is outside your control, why are you disturbed by it? Accept it as you accept the weather or the turning of the seasons. If it is within your control, then you can act on it with calm focus rather than emotional reaction. This simple practice, applied consistently, gradually builds apatheia. You train your mind to distinguish between events and your judgments about events. You train yourself to hold judgments lightly, to question them, to adopt judgments that serve your peace and virtue rather than ones that disturb you. The cultivation of apatheia is directly related to the discipline of assent we discussed earlier. Apatheia is what you develop through consistently practicing that discipline. Every time you pause before accepting an impression or judgment, every time you question whether you should assent to a thought that arises, you are building apatheia. Over time, your mind becomes less reactive, less automatically disturbed by everything that happens. A kind of inner stillness develops, a steady center that remains calm while emotions and external events move through your awareness like weather patterns moving through a vast sky. This inner stillness is immensely practical for eliminating distraction. When your mind is constantly churning with emotional reactions, you cannot focus on what matters. Your attention is hijacked by the internal storm. But when you have cultivated apatheia, when you have developed that steady center, you can remain focused on your chosen work regardless of what is happening emotionally or externally. Someone criticizes you and you notice a brief sting, but you do not get pulled into hours of rumination. You return your attention to your work, you experience a setback, and you feel disappointment, but you do not spiral into catastrophizing. You assess what you can learn and what to do next, and you continue. Your attention remains yours. The Stoics used various practices to cultivate apatheia. One is the view from above, imagining yourself from a great distance or height so that your individual concerns shrink to proper proportion. Marcus Aurelius would imagine looking down from space, seeing the Earth as a tiny point, seeing himself as one human among billions, seeing his concerns as infinitesimally small in the vast cosmos. This practice does not make your life meaningless. It makes your emotional reactions to small events reveal themselves as disproportionate. You realize that the criticism that feels devastating today is absolutely invisible from any real distance, temporal or spatial. In a year, it will not matter. In 100 years, no one will remember it happened. Why let it steal your attention and peace today? You can practice the view from above when you find yourself disturbed and distracted. Whatever is bothering you, zoom out. Imagine looking at yourself and your situation from very far away. How important does this seem from that distance? Will this matter in a year? In 10 years? On your deathbed? Will you even remember this happened? Usually the answer is no. And recognizing that helps you let go of the disturbance and return your attention to what actually matters. Another practice for cultivating apatheia is remembering that everything is impermanent. This thing that seems so important right now, this emotion that feels overwhelming, this situation that seems permanent, all of it will pass. All things arise and dissolve. This too shall pass, as the old wisdom says. When you remember this deeply, you take things less seriously. Not because you do not care, but because you understand that grasping and clinging and being disturbed by the changing flow of life accomplishes nothing. You can care about things, you can act on things, but you do not need to be emotionally devastated by them. You can hold everything lightly, do your best, and accept whatever comes. The Stoics also practiced preparing for disturbance through premeditatio malorum, which we discussed earlier. By imagining difficulties before they arrive, you reduce their power to disturb you when they actually happen. This is practice for apatheia. You train your mind to remain steady even in adverse circumstances because you already faced those circumstances in imagination and decided how you would maintain your equanimity. When the actual event arrives, it does not catch you unprepared emotionally. You already practiced your response. You already decided you would not be devastated. and so you maintain your inner stillness and your focused attention. It is important to understand that apatheia does not mean not caring about anything. The Stoics cared deeply about living virtuously, about serving others, about growing in wisdom. Marcus Aurelius cared deeply about governing Rome well, about justice, about doing his duty, but he cultivated apatheia toward outcomes, toward things outside his control, toward the judgments and opinions of others. He cared about his efforts and his character. He did not stake his peace on external results. That distinction is crucial. Apatheia is not caring about nothing. It is not being disturbed by externals while caring deeply about your own virtue and character. You can practice this same distinction. Care deeply about what is within your control, your efforts, your choices, your character development, but cultivate apatheia, inner stillness toward everything else, outcomes, other people's opinions, success and failure as the world defines them. Do your best and accept whatever comes. This is not fatalism because you are acting vigorously based on what you care about, but it is freedom because your peace and focus do not depend on things you cannot control. One sign that you are developing apatheia is that you begin to notice a gap between feelings and actions. A difficult emotion arises, anger or fear or sadness, and in the past that emotion would have immediately driven your behavior. You would have acted on the anger, been paralyzed by the fear, been consumed by the sadness. But as apatheia develops, you notice the emotion, but you are not controlled by it. You feel anger, but you do not need to act on it. You can choose to respond differently. You feel fear, but you can move forward anyway. You feel sadness, but you can still do what needs to be done. The emotions become like weather inside you, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, but the essential you, the choosing self, remains steady and capable of action regardless of the weather. This capacity to observe emotions without being controlled by them is transformative for eliminating distraction. So much distraction is emotion-driven. You feel anxiety, so you distract yourself with social media. You feel boredom, so you distract yourself with entertainment. You feel inadequacy, so you distract yourself with comparison and endless scrolling. But as you develop apatheia, you can feel these emotions without needing to escape them through distraction. You feel anxiety and you notice it, you observe it. You ask what judgment is creating it. You question that judgment, and then you return your attention to your chosen work, even while the anxiety is still present in the background. The emotion does not control your attention anymore. Apatheia also helps with positive emotions that can distract. You receive praise and feel elated, but if you have cultivated inner stillness, you do not get carried away by the elation. You notice it, appreciate it, and remain centered. You remain focused on your work rather than spending the rest of the day basking in praise or worrying whether you will receive more. You experience success and feel happy, but you do not become attached to the success or dependent on it for your peace. You enjoy it without clinging to it. This equanimity in the face of both negative and positive events keeps your attention steady. The ancient Stoics described the sage, the ideal wise person, as someone who has perfect apatheia, who is completely unshakable internally regardless of what happens externally. None of the ancient Stoics claimed to have achieved this fully. It is an ideal to work toward, not a destination you reach and then remain. But even moving in that direction, even developing some degree of inner stillness, transforms your life. Your attention becomes steadier. You are distracted less by emotional storms. You can maintain focus on what matters through difficulty and ease, through criticism and praise, through success and failure. This is the 9th method. Cultivate apatheia, inner stillness. Practice questioning the judgments that create disturbing emotions. Develop the capacity to observe emotions without being controlled by them. Train your mind to remain steady regardless of external circumstances. Use practices like the view from above, remembering impermanence, preparing for difficulty, and holding outcomes lightly. As you develop this inner stillness, distraction loses much of its power because distraction thrives on emotional turbulence, on being pulled this way and that by desires and aversions, by fears and elations. When your center is still, when you have developed apatheia, your attention naturally rests where you choose to place it, and you discover a profound focus and peace that does not depend on anything external. The 10th and final Stoic method for eliminating distraction from your life brings together everything we have explored and invites you into perhaps the most powerful practice of all. Amor fati, the love of fate, the practice practice of not merely accepting but actively embracing everything that happens as necessary and ultimately good. This is not blind optimism or forced positivity. It is a radical reorientation of your entire relationship to reality, a practice that, when truly embodied, eliminates distraction at its very root by removing the friction between what is and what you wish were, the friction that creates almost all psychological suffering and fractured attention. Think about how much mental energy you spend resisting reality. Something happens that you do not want to happen, and your mind goes to war against it. This should not have happened. If only things were different. Why did this have to occur? I cannot accept this. That resistance, that internal argument with reality, is a massive source of distraction. Your attention cannot be fully present with what is actually happening because part of your mind is busy arguing that it should not be happening. You cannot focus on responding wisely to the situation because you are stuck in resistance to the situation. You cannot see opportunities that exist in the present because you are focused on wishing the present were different. Amor fati is the practice that dissolves this resistance completely, not by forcing yourself to pretend that bad things are good, but by understanding at the deepest level that everything that happens is part of the unfolding of nature, of cause and effect, of the vast interconnected web of existence. Everything that happens had to happen given all the causes and conditions that led to it. It could not have been otherwise. Wishing it were different is like wishing 2 + 2 = 5. It is an argument with reality itself, and reality always wins that argument. The question is whether you will continue to exhaust yourself fighting a battle you cannot win, or whether you will accept reality as it is and thereby reclaim all that energy for actually responding to what is. Marcus Aurelius practiced amor fati constantly. He would remind himself, everything that happens to me is material for my virtue to work with. Obstacles are fuel for my growth. Difficulties are opportunities to practice patience, wisdom, courage. Nothing that happens to me is truly bad if I use it well, if I respond with virtue. He went further than just accepting his fate. He loved it. He saw everything that happened, pleasant or unpleasant, easy or difficult, as exactly what he needed for his development as a human being. He wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. That is amor fati. Whatever comes, you make it serve your growth and your purpose." Nietzsche, who was influenced by Stoicism, articulated amor fati beautifully. "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it, but love it." This is the invitation. Not to just tolerate what happens, not to grit your teeth and endure, but to actively want it, to love it, to see it as perfect exactly as it is because it is real, because it happened, because it is part of your path. How do you practice amor fati? It begins exactly where you are, with whatever is happening in your life right now. Are you facing difficulties? Can you practice seeing them as opportunities? Can you look for what this situation is teaching you, how it is making you stronger? What gifts might be hidden in this challenge? Are you experiencing loss? Can you practice accepting that loss as part of the natural flow of life, as an opportunity to practice resilience and to discover that you are stronger than you thought? Are you in a situation you did not choose and do not want? Can you practice asking, now that I am here, how can I make this serve my growth? How can I respond with virtue? The practice is to take whatever is happening and, instead of resisting it or wishing it were different, to embrace it fully. To say, whether out loud or internally, I accept this, I embrace this, this is part of my path, I will use this, I will learn from this, I will grow through this. This simple practice, this reorientation from resistance to acceptance to embrace, transforms your experience of life. It eliminates the distraction of constantly arguing with reality. It reclaims all that energy you were spending on resistance and makes it available for actually dealing with what is. Amor fati eliminates distraction in several powerful ways. First, it removes the constant mental narrative of complaint and resistance that runs in the background of many people's minds. That narrative is deeply distracting. Part of your attention is always engaged in it, in noticing what is wrong, in wishing things were different, in feeling like a victim of circumstances. When you practice amor fati, that narrative falls silent. What is happening is what is happening. You accept it, embrace it, and turn your full attention to responding well. Your mind becomes quieter, clearer, more focused. Second, amor fati removes the distraction of regret about the past. So much attention is wasted replaying past events, wishing they had gone differently, feeling guilt or shame or resentment about what happened. But if you practice amor fati, you embrace even your past exactly as it was. Every mistake you made, every hardship you endured, every path you took, all of it was necessary to make you who you are now. All of it was part of your education. You would not change it even if you could, because it brought you here, to this moment, to this opportunity for growth. That embrace of the past frees all the attention that was stuck there. You can finally be fully present because you are no longer partially engaged in an argument with what already happened. Third, amor fati removes the distraction of anxiety about the future. When you truly embrace fate, you understand that whatever happens will be something you can work with, something you can respond to with virtue. You do not need to control outcomes because you trust that whatever outcome occurs, you will embrace it and use it. This removes so much worry and planning and trying to force things to go a certain way. You can plan and act wisely, but you are not attached to specific results. Whatever comes, you will love it and make it serve you. That trust frees enormous attention for the present moment. The practice of amor fati connects deeply with the dichotomy of control we explored at the beginning. You control your judgments, your efforts, your character. You do not control outcomes, other people, external events. Amor fati is the emotional and spiritual completion of that intellectual understanding. You do not just intellectually accept that you do not control externals. You embrace it, you love it, you want it to be that way, because it frees you to focus entirely on what you do control. You love that you cannot control outcomes because it means you can put all your attention on your efforts and character, rather than being distracted by trying to control what you never could. Epictetus taught that you should approach everything that happens with the attitude, "This is what Providence has given me to work with. This is my assignment. This is perfect material for practicing virtue right now." If people are annoying, perfect, you get to practice patience. If circumstances are difficult, perfect, you get to practice courage and wisdom. If you are experiencing loss, perfect, you get to practice resilience and perspective. Everything that happens is exactly the right difficulty for your current level of development. That is amor fati, seeing everything that comes as a gift, as an opportunity, as exactly what you need. You can practice this with small things throughout your day. Traffic is worse than expected. Instead of frustration, practice amor fati. This is happening. I accept it. What can this teach me? Maybe patience. Maybe I can use this time for reflection or to listen to something educational. The situation is perfect as it is. Your plan falls through. Instead of disappointment, practice amor fati. This is how it was meant to be. What new opportunities does this open? What is life trying to tell me? I embrace this change. As you practice with small things, the attitude becomes more natural. When bigger challenges come, you have trained yourself to meet them with acceptance and embrace rather than resistance. Amor fati also applies to your own nature, your own strengths and limitations. Much distraction comes from wishing you were different than you are, from comparing yourself to others, from feeling inadequate. But amor fati invites you to embrace yourself exactly as you are, as you have the abilities you have the challenges you have the personality, the history, the body you have. All of it is perfect material for your particular path. All of it is exactly what you need to work with. Stop wishing you were someone else and fully embrace being you. That acceptance eliminates the distraction of constant self-judgment and comparison and frees you to work with what you actually have. The ancient Stoics connected amor fati with their belief in providence, in a rational order to the universe. Whether you share that belief or not, you can practice amor fati. Even from a purely naturalistic view, everything that happens is the result of causes and conditions. It could not have been otherwise. Fighting against what is already determined is pointless. Accepting it, embracing it, using it, that is wisdom. That is where your power lies. Marcus Aurelius faced enormous challenges, wars, plagues, betrayals, the death of children, the weight of governing an empire. He could have spent his life in bitterness and complaint, in wishing things were different. Instead, he practiced amor fati. He embraced everything that came. He saw it all as material for his practice of virtue. His meditations are full of this practice. Do not let the panorama of your life oppress you. Do not dwell on all the various troubles which may have occurred in the past or may occur in the future. Just ask yourself in each instance of the present, what is there in this work which I cannot endure or support? Think on this and you will be ashamed to confess it. Then remind yourself that it is not the future or the past which weighs upon you, but always the present. And the present is always diminished if you isolate it and call your mind to account if it cannot stand firm against this limited thing. He is teaching amor fati, amor. Whatever the present moment contains, embrace it. It is just this moment. You can handle this moment. You can respond to this moment with virtue. Do not be distracted by the past or future or by wishing the present were different. Just be here, embrace what is, and act well. As you practice amor fati over time, something profound happens. You stop feeling like life is happening to you, like you are a victim of circumstances. You start feeling like life is happening for you, like every event is an opportunity for your growth. This shift in perspective is transformative. You become much less distractible because you are not constantly trying to escape your circumstances or wishing you were somewhere else. You are fully here, fully engaged with what is because you have embraced it completely. Amor fati also connects with acceptance of death, with memento mori. To love your fate completely is to accept that your fate includes your death. You will die. Everyone you love will die. Everything will end. And amor fati invites you to embrace even that, not because death is pleasant, but because it is real, because it is part of the package of being alive, because accepting it and embracing it frees you to live fully now. When you have embraced even death, what else is there to fear? What else can distract you with anxiety? You have accepted the ultimate fate and you are free. The practice of amor fati creates a life where you are not constantly in conflict with reality. That conflict, that friction, that resistance is what fragments your attention. But when you embrace reality as it is, when you love your fate completely, your attention becomes unified. You are not split between what is and what you wish were. You are whole. You are present. You are focused. All your energy flows toward responding well to what is, rather than being drained by resistance to what is. This final method completes your toolkit for eliminating distraction. You now have 10 powerful Stoic practices. Focus only on what you can control. Premeditate difficulties. Clarify your values. Question your impulses. Practice negative visualization. Establish a morning ritual. Review your day each evening. Train through voluntary discomfort. Cultivate inner stillness and embrace your fate completely, loving whatever comes as exactly what you need. These are not quick fixes, they are lifetime practices. You will not master them quickly. You will forget them and have to remember them again. You will practice imperfectly. That is fine. That is part of the path. The ancient Stoics themselves practiced imperfectly. Marcus Aurelius had to remind himself of these principles daily in his journal because he kept forgetting them, kept falling into old patterns, but he kept returning to the practice. That is what matters. Not perfection, but consistent practice. Continued return to these principles. As you go forward from here, choose one or two of these methods to focus on. Practice them daily. When they become more natural, add another. Build slowly. Be patient with yourself. Notice when distraction arises and use it as an opportunity to practice. Every moment of distraction caught and returned to focus is a small victory. Every time you choose to live according to these principles, rather than being swept along by impulse and circumstance, you are growing. The goal is not to eliminate every distraction from your life. That is impossible as long as you are human. The goal is to become someone who is less distractible, who can notice distraction and choose to return attention to what matters, who lives more and more from intention rather than reaction, who focuses on what is within their control and accepts what is not, who meets life with presence and virtue rather than scattered attention and constant resistance. You have within you everything you need to live this way. The ancient Stoics were not special people with unusual abilities. They were human beings facing difficulties, working with the same minds and challenges you face. What made them different was their practice, their commitment to training their attention, their willingness to examine their lives and grow. You can make that same commitment. You can practice these methods. You can gradually become less distracted, more focused, more present, more free. Tonight, as you rest, let these teachings settle into your consciousness. You do not need to remember everything. The essential wisdom is simple. Focus on what you control, accept what you cannot control, live with virtue, be present, question your judgments, practice daily, love your fate. These simple truths, lived consistently, eliminate distraction not by changing your circumstances, but by changing you, by making you someone who is not easily pulled away from what matters, someone who has found the inner citadel that remains calm and focused regardless of the outer chaos. The Stoic path is not easy, but it is worth walking. It leads to a life of freedom, focus, and genuine satisfaction. It leads to being fully present for the one life you have, the precious and finite time you have been given. Do not waste that time in distraction. Use these ancient methods, practice them, return to them when you forget, and gradually, step by step, day by day, become the focused, present, virtuous person you are capable of being. The power has always been yours. The attention has always been yours to direct. These methods simply help you remember that and practice living from that truth. Begin now. Begin tomorrow. Begin again and again. That is all you need to do. And that is everything.